damage to a person's well-being, whether that's physical or emotional well-being, stress being the operative word there. And so in 2009, I started to focus on going beyond qualitative assessment. So qualitative assessment is just simply to be ranking yourself, rating yourself on whatever parameter you want each day. You know, how did I trade today? One out of one, from between 1 and 10, and things like that. And I wanted to go beyond that because it wasn't really giving me the results in terms of consistency that I wanted. And so I ventured into measuring biology, but the biological responses. So muscle tension, heart rate, peripheral temperature, skin conductance, then even into brain waves, which is EEG or QEEG. And so from 2009 to the present date, we've developed a software, and we have a wireless device that measures a trader whilst they're trading. But the point of today's conversation is simply to give you guys a little bit of awareness in terms of how important heart rate is. Now, heart rate in all matters of life is extremely important, and it's the determining factor on whether you're going to be successful or not. As an example, Wimbledon finals, sitting for the match, and as the person's about to serve for the match, he gets nervous, and that'll show up in his heart rate, and he'll fault. That's a guarantee. And yet, on the other side of the fence is the person who, regardless of that amount of stress and pressure, can relax himself so that his heart rate decreases and stays stable, will be able to focus exactly where they want to put the ball, whether it's down the line or cross-court serve, and they'll be able to execute even an ace for the Wimbledon championship. So much the same way in trading. If you're assessing the market, so you're looking at a certain type of a security, and if your heart rate is going out of control, or if it's elevated, it means that it's already started to push adrenaline into your blood supply. Once adrenaline hits your blood supply, the oxygen level and the oxygen to carbon dioxide mix inside your brain drastically decreases, and your executive functioning starts to decrease as well. Now, because trading is all about executive functioning, that is assessing, timing, and executing, if your executive functioning is starting to decrease in its ability to collect, assess data, then you're in no state any longer to actually make a correct decision. So that's why we go long when we should have gone short, and we go short when we should have gone long. It's simply because you've gotten in a state of stress, panic, and anxiety, so that you've elevated your heart rate, which has shot adrenaline, which has decreased your blood supply, and now you can't think clearly anymore. And therefore, if you're not thinking clearly, you're obviously going to choose the wrong direction in the market. It's as simple as it gets. So we monitor heart rate a lot. There's a lot of things that we monitor, and this is an assessment I did last year for a couple of guys at the Montreal Derivatives Exchange. Now, there's a lot of things that we can monitor, but in our wireless device, we monitor heart rate, peripheral temperature, and skin conductance. That means that we monitor the heart, we monitor whether the temperature in the fingers is increasing or decreasing, and we measure where the perspiration is increasing or decreasing. Perspiration increase is a very good factor in terms of how much cognitive noise are you producing in your head. So an example of cognitive noise is you're standing on a footpath of a busy road, and there's no pedestrian crossing, and you're thinking, when should you walk or run across the road? Now, If in your mind you're talking a lot, like should I now, should I just wait, if you're constantly doing that, that's going to show up in your perspiration, and your perspiration is going to skyrocket every time you're having these thoughts. Should I now? No, should wait after this. As you're doing that, your skin conductance just starts to increase and starts to spike really sharp. Now, you don't want to be making a decision in that sort of a state of mind, because if you jump at that point in time, you're most probably going to be hit by a car. The peripheral temperature is very important because it tells us whether you're in a state of vasoconstriction. Now, if you're in vasoconstriction, it means that your blood supplies and your veins are actually starting to dilate or to constrict, which means that you're getting less blood supply to your brain, which means, again, your decision making is going to decrease. The heart rate, as I said earlier, is exceptionally important because it's going to tell us whether or not you're going into what's called a flight fight response. So whether you're parasympathetically or sympathetically inclined. If you're parasympathetically inclined, means that you're relaxed, means that you have a higher chance of being able to get into what's a peak performing state, which is being able to access brain waves which are called peak alpha. If you are having elevated heart rate, it means that you've gone into a sympathetic response, which means that there's no chance that you're going to be able to get into a peak performing state, which is you're not going to be able to hit peak alpha, which means that you're in the flow, you're feeling the market, you're nice and calm, you know what you're doing, you know what you need to do, and you're ready to execute what it is that you need to do in a very orderly fashion. And that's what trading is all about. You want to know what you're doing, you want to know where the market is, you want to know that you're in tune with the market, and you want to be calm enough that when it's the time to enter, you have the cognitive clarity and the calmness to be able to execute that trade instantaneously when you need to. Once you've entered the trade, now you also need to be able to regulate your heart rate so that you stay calm enough not to sabotage yourself by getting out of the trade too early. So say, for instance, you go long and you've timed it perfectly. Now, if your heart rate starts to elevate and you start losing your composure, your thoughts are going to start to run wild. Should I have gone long? Maybe I should have gone short. Ooh, maybe I should just take my profit now. Maybe it's not going to go all the way to my profit target. And this is what heart rate will tell you. So even without our device, my recommendation for every single one is to, and you don't even need to have a device, but when you're trading, start to focus on what is my heart doing at this point in time. And when you can feel your heart coming out of your chest and you make a certain decision, then just make a note in a pad and turn around and say, man, my heart was coming out of my chest. I went long and it was a winning trade, it was a losing trade, got stopped out in 2 seconds, or I didn't get stopped out at all. And start to focus on what your heart's telling you in terms of a response to what the market is actually telling you. So you're receiving information from the market. As you're receiving this information and digesting that data, it's affecting your heart. And you want to just start to be mindful of what your heart is actually doing so that you can start to practice what's called self-awareness and self-regulation. You want to start to regulate yourself and say, okay, I know my heart's going crazy now, so I know that every time I enter the market with my heart rate like this, I usually get stopped out, so I'm just going to calm myself down because I know an elevated heart rate like this doesn't produce any good results. So that's a quick little summary on heart rate, and then I'll just show you what some of this stuff looks like. So hopefully you guys can all see properly. So this top line here, you can see light blue and red markings. Now the light blue is, that's abdominal breathing, and the red is the person's heart rate. The second line is thoracic breathing. So we're measuring their breathing from their chest, and we're comparing that with their heart rate as well. The third line is what's called a power spectrum line, which is telling us how much power as an electromagnetic field is actually coming out of the heart. And we can't zoom in that much, but on the vertical axis, it goes to about 50 here. Now, this is doing an assessment on a person where he's not being given any cues whatsoever. So we've just hooked him up and we've said, all right, listen, breathe for the next 3 minutes as you normally would do. Relax yourself. So there's no stress induced here. We just said, okay, just relax and just breathe. Now, a person, any ordinary person, pull him off the street. If you do this to him, they'll be breathing. A resting breath rate is usually between 12 and 14 breaths. If you're breathing more than 14 breaths per minute, resting with no stress induced, it's actually, you should actually much rather even see a doctor or be thinking about seeing a doctor. But anywhere between 12 and 14 breaths for a normal person, pick him off the street, that's what they should be doing. To get into a peak state, you should be breathing about 6 breaths per minute in order to hit peak alpha. So we hooked him up and we said, okay, just do what you normally do. Power spectrum hit close to 50. Now, this is what happened when we gave him, this is now on a 1 minute. The first thing, this was all 3 minutes in a row, 5 minutes, sorry. So we let him breathe by himself for 5 minutes. Now the next, this is broken up into minute segments. We've just expanded the previous thing. So I want you guys to notice the fluctuations in the breath rate. So he has 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15 breaths per minute. So he's there, that's average Joe breath rate. I want you to have a look at what his heart rate looks like. This is what his heart rate looks like. Now, I won't give you any clue, but I'll show you what his heart rate looks like when we give him a cue to start to breathe at 6 breaths per minute. So when we start to change him out of 15 breaths per minute to go to 6, which is the foundation from which you can enter into a peak state. So that's what his heart rate looks like at 15 breaths per minute. And now, let's just see. And now this is when this was him when we gave him a visual cue to breathe at 6 breaths per minute. You can see that there's a couple of things which are very interesting. You can see that his power spectrum ended up shooting up way beyond 50. The amplitude, the height of his breath rate started to increase. And now when we bring it down into a 1 minute graph, this is 6 breaths per minute. And you can see that his heart rate now is monitoring and flowing with every beat. So every breath he takes, he's getting one big beat out of his heart. So the clinical term for that is that he's actually got heart rate coherence. It means that your heart rate and your breath rate are actually in sync now. So have a look. So if you look at that, and then let's go back up. See his heart rate here. It doesn't follow his breath rate whatsoever. So he's totally out of coherence here. Now, when you're out of coherence, when your breath rate and your heart rate are out of coherence, it actually causes more cognitive noise. You have more indecision and more doubt, and you have more self-talk. And when you're trading, you don't want self-talk because you'll talk yourself out of things. Well, maybe I shouldn't go in yet. I'll just wait a little bit longer, and the market moves and you miss it. So here, all of a sudden, he's got heart rate coherence. What happens then is that your muscle tension decreases, blood supply increases, your temperature starts to, you can't tell here, the numbers are far too small, but his actually temperature increased. There's a slight decrease here, but that's a decrease of point something of a degree. His power spectrum shot up. And so all of a sudden, he's in a state where he can actually start to enter into a state of peak alpha. And that's what every single trader, if you want to produce excellent decision making in your trading so that you are getting 6 out of 10 trades right, you need to be accessing this state. And if you're not in this state, it's best not to gamble any money. The best form of risk management is don't make a trade if you're not in a peak state. When you're in a peak state, make a trade, because your odds have increased so much more significantly for you to be able to make money in the market. And that's pretty much what I wanted to cover today.